Edge, where we're going to cover a certain hedge fund that is really enthralled with Batman. And you'll see why in just a sec. Bam.
Off and running, John. I'll tell you, I'm still tired. I don't know about you, but that national championship game last night, that was pretty fun, especially that first half. That was killer. But I know we'll talk about that later on.
Woo. Yeah, that was. It was. I tell you what, Pete. Both those games, Alabama, Michigan, and Michigan against Washington, both lived up to the hype.
Yep.
And a play here or there, and Washington could have been in it. Obviously, they were in it, but I mean, they could have been a lot more into it if they hadn't had 73 holding so much. And I guess that's a credit to the Michigan defense, too, though.
Yeah, they were great all year. But anyway, we better get to the macro, baby.
Macro minute. My question to you, Pete, is everything at CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, is it all about AI?
Yes.
Okay, next.
I'll give you this one. As we look ahead, John, one thing we always stare at is all these different economic data, right? But the CPI, I think, is one of the bigger ones. So I think that coming up Thursday, right in front of the earnings season kicking off as well. I'm looking at that CPI because that's going to have a huge influence on the treasuries. We know that, and how the Fed is viewing the economy and everything else. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and it's also interesting, Pete, that the CES Consumer Electronics Show used to sort of coincide with the AVN, which is the Adult Video Awards. They have now separated those two. So you don't see all the guys with the pocket protectors walking around with the adult entertainers.
Probably a good thing.
Probably a good thing. All right, let's talk about some fantastic futures.
Fantastic futures.
Well, fantastic futures, Pete. I'm going to say it is that you have said it many times, and it's very, very true. The crude oil contract looks more like a heartbeat than it does a multi-trillion-dollar asset, which of course crude oil is. It's one of the, other than oxygen and water, Pete, it's one of the most important things on the planet in terms of keeping things moving, both from a lubrication standpoint, of course, from cars, boats, airplanes, everything else. But it's been going like this, up and down, $2 or $3 a day for a $70 instrument. That's pretty much why it's my fantastic future.
I'm going to throw out something in the same kind of category. At least it's an energy, John. But how about nat gas? It's back up above $3. It hadn't been there since November 16th. So we bottomed out in December. We were down there at 251, and now here today we actually have been as high as 316. Interesting to see this move to the upside. Can it be sustainable? We'll see, because we think every once in a while that crude oil is sustainable and maybe going higher, and it doesn't. It's been in a range for a while now. So what happens with nat gas? I'm not sure, but it's a pretty good breakout for 2024. Sure
is. It's looking pretty strong. And Boyle, of course, is a levered ETF for the upside, and Cold, KOLD, is the opposite. It's a levered ETF for the downside. All right, Pete, let's talk about that stock that we teased them with, Grifols, which is indeed it's basically plasma and so forth, anything to do with blood. It's a company based out of Spain. But it turns out that Gotham City Research, which is a hedge fund, put a hit on these guys. And so I figure they must be big fans of Batman if they name it Gotham City Research. So we thought we'd share this with you about Batman.
It's the rainy season, man. Gotham is wet. Sorry, what's up with that voice?
What's up with that voice?
This voice rules.
That voice sucks.
It sucks. Yours drools. Yours is too gravelly.
Yours isn't even masked.
Just your regular Bruce Wayne voice.
What
Lowered.
is
Lord.
So I can pop him right in the mouth. You sound like you're getting winded, pulling the foil off of a single serving yogurt. Well, actually, I'm plant-based, so I don't eat yogurt. So
I don't eat
berries, nuts, and actually Alfred makes a little mild avocado for me every morning. Are you even wearing black eye makeup? Or is it just low iron?
Low iron.
You need to eat some fucking meat. You need more calories when you fight hardened criminals. A, there are multiple ways to get protein. You don't need to slaughter and take the life of
I don't even know.
B, I don't do much fighting.
I don't do much fighting.
What?
What? Batman is outraged. He doesn't do much fighting.
Well, and Gotham City Research is outraged, right, John? This is an
they will be
acquisition.
now.
This is talking about accounting and the craziness of what they perceive going on here, which is wow, that it's gutsy, and they must think they're right, or they wouldn't do it. But it certainly is interesting. The one thing I would say about this stock, John, so it's a Spanish stock, right? Their debt is $11 billion. Now, you look at their balance sheet, you look at this, you look at that, but I look at that number and it makes me shake just a little bit. And they're talking about what their concerns are with this company. I can understand Gotham City at this point in time, if everything else is right. None of us know the depth of what really is there other than them. They did the deep dive, but I looked at that debt, John, and I immediately said, you know what? This one's not for me.
Yeah, Pete, it was an $11 billion company this morning before they nailed it. And when they put this out, it lost almost $4 billion in market cap, and it's still down hard. So Gotham City Research, again, big fans of Batman. Maybe they think the Penguin's running this one, Pete.
Or King Tut.
That's one thing they haven't done in a movie yet. They've done the Joker, they've done the Riddler, the Penguin, Mr. Freeze. They never did King Tut. Maybe that'll be the next Batman, Pete.
Should be.
How about Juniper?
Yeah.
JNPR. This one up big because Hewlett Packard Enterprise, HPE, is going to be coming in with a massive $13 billion bid for the company. And this is the highest it's been since March of 22, I think, Pete. And for the longest time, Juniper has just been flatlining in the mid-20s. You can look at it on the charts, folks. It's just a nothing. And now all of a sudden, Hewlett Packard Enterprise puts in a big bid. They pop up into the 30s, and congratulations to anybody who had some.
Yeah, and Juniper, John, it's an amazing company. We've talked about it many times, not just in the past, but even on this show, we've talked about it before. But this run to the upside is spectacular. 20+%, hit 52-week highs, multi-year highs. Absolutely incredible. When you look at the balance sheet of a company like this, you can understand why, if that fits and the synergies are there, it could really be something beneficial, I think, to HPE. And that's exactly what they're counting on right now. But John, they've got free cash flow of over $600 million. There is a small amount of a short in here. And I'll tell you, they got to be just wondering what they were thinking, because, about 3 or 4% of the outstanding shares were short. Wow, that is not going to be an easy one to swallow. That's going to be a very difficult one. And it's going to be interesting to see how this unfolds. But HPE says this could really cause them to really make some big leaps and bounds into the future. And if that's the case, this sure looks like something good. I wanted to point out, John, we have had so much going on in tech and biotech and some of these takeovers. It really is something that I think, more and more people, I think, have to pay attention to this, because you and I talk about these biotechs almost every single day. Somebody's buying something out there, and it really is starting to roll, and some of these numbers are pretty big.
Yeah, and these, it's easier to finance it too, Pete, when the financing costs go down as much as they've gone down. Yeah, they're up a lot higher than they were 2 years ago. We're not at zero interest rates anymore, but nobody was borrowing at zero anyway. But they were borrowing at 2 and so forth and 3, and then all of a sudden it shot up to 7 and 8. Depending on your credit worthiness, and it's come back down under 7 again and moving into the mid 6s. So we'll keep our eye on that. let's talk about Tilray, Pete, because a lot of you who are tuned into the show would say, Tilray, wow, that's cannabis, right? Yes, it is. But you know what they did, Pete? From Anheuser-Busch, just a year and a half ago or so, they bought at least 8 brands of these microbrews and so forth. And there's obviously a thought that they're diversifying. There's also the possibility that by getting into these beverages, for a pot company to get into beverages, maybe they're going to start trying to put pot in those beverages. It's been done, but these guys are not doing it right now. But that's something, Pete, that I think a lot of people are looking at, and the sales of their beer brands are up over 100% year over year. So it's pretty big news for Tilray.
Big news for sure. And this is a company that struggled, no doubt about that, John. As a matter of fact, still struggling, but maybe this is going to be the answer. It certainly looks like it's a possibility that it could. When you talk about this name, Tilray, it was down 15% in 2023, by the way, just to compare it. The NASDAQ was up 43%. So Tilray has been under pressure. They've been obviously trying to figure it out, but they continue to just go down, down, down. And by the way, those shorts remain very high there. They got about 17% of the stock is still on the short side. So when I looked at the stock, John, it had a little bit of a bump to the upside. It fell back down a little bit. It was down about 7 or 8%. The last I looked, it could be something different now. But this is an interesting one for sure. And I'll tell you, I think that there is something to this whole alcohol with cannabis thing, and I think that could be something great. But for right now, at least, as you said, they have done incredibly well in terms of what these numbers look like from some of those different alcohols that they have bought, and 117% higher in revenue. That's a pretty big number, I'd say.
Yeah, and but they were small enough potatoes that obviously Anheuser-Busch didn't want to sit there and keep those breweries operating as microbrews or whatever. It just wasn't worth it. It wasn't a rounding error at Anheuser-Busch.
Right.
But Tilray's got to do something, Pete. I mean, this stock was in the 70s back, 20 or whatever years ago when they were first starting to come out with, okay, maybe we'll let them have cannabis trading like Canopy Growth and some of those companies. But since then, it's just been from the upper left to the lower right, just like that. And today's turnaround, to your point, is just like that. They just can't get out of their own way.
Yeah.
All right. Urban Outfitters, Pete. This is Free People, Anthropology, of course, their brand name, Urban Outfitters. Newly or something like that. I've never seen one of those stores, but they did report that they had sales increasing double digits. And anybody that's announcing that is a good thing, unless you're looking for a lot more than that. But this was a great thing for them because stock popped better than 8% on the news, Pete. And I got to think that the sales at Free People and Anthropology were the major drivers here.
Yeah, 52-week highs, not so bad, right, John? I mean, this is not a day where a lot of stocks probably can say that because there's been pressure on the markets, at least early on, a lot more pressure on the market. So it's interesting to see this really great pop. Obviously, we can go through. There's a lot of different names out there. You brought up AEO and some of these names that have had really good quarters. They've actually produced pretty well. They've got the demand. They've had the supply, but they've had the demand to bring down some of that supply. $200 million in free cash flow. That isn't so bad. There are some shorts in here who are probably not liking what they're hearing today about how solid things are. This is another one, John, where we're seeing about an 8 to 12% short interest rate. That just adds to those moves when you get that squeeze to the upside. And I think that's why we're seeing those 52-week highs. It is good news, as you said, some of the numbers that they put up. But when you've got that kind of a short, that just it just gives it an extra little oomph to the upside, right? And I think that's why we've seen that extension to the upside.
Yeah, that is the gasoline on the fire right there, folks, the shorts. Yeah. All right, Pete, let's take a look at our buddy Stool Presidente, because he, of course, put $1 million on Michigan to win the national championship. He won. Michigan won. Hope we're not spoiling it for anybody out there. But let's take a look at what he did on Barstool Sports and as Stool Presidente. Dave Portnoy at the game down in Houston.
You gotta love that he's a fan first, right? I mean, I know he's excited about the money, but that's a fan. The hugs.
Yeah. That's it.
It's great, the excitement level. And John, that Michigan crowd was on fire. They were loud. They were as loud as I've ever heard them.
Yep. They traveled well too, Pete, as you know. I mean, they are now, and they were before, but they're the most successful program in the country.
Yep. Amazing.
Pretty amazing. The winning helmet. God knows what he's going to buy from those players and stuff, Pete. Now, we're getting into Pete's Red Zone Sports here, folks. But Pete, for as far as those Red Zone Sports, and that's a perfect freeze frame. Portnoy there. Congratulations, Dave. Pete, is NIL going to ruin this thing? I mean, you've got, the Ewers is the quarterback for Texas. So Arch Manning didn't get in there and play at all, I don't think. Did he this year, Pete? Did they?
If he got on, it was very minimal, John. Very minimal.
Okay. But, the kid made $2.8 million.
That's a
freaking Purdy's making $800,000. One is leading his team perhaps to the Super Bowl. The other is sitting on the bench all year. And I'm not ripping on Arch, but I'm just saying, what? And is Harbaugh going to put up with that, Pete? Or is he going to say, you know what? Now that I've done it, I'm going to take the deal out in San Diego and be Justin Herbert's, play caller. And that's how I'm going to finish up my career. What do you think?
I think that at some point, John, and it maybe is now, he might consider this. He loses J.J. McCarthy. They lose a lot of great players, but that wouldn't affect him, I don't think. I think the relationship he had with J.J. McCarthy would be one of the reasons. And, you and I both played college ball at high levels. We also played in the NFL, so we understand a lot about what goes into that. And especially even from the coaching side, John, I coached at a Division III school during a time when the NFL was striking. And I coached in the XFL as well. So I understand that whole world. I think what's happening is Jim is probably sitting there trying to figure out, do I want to stay here? Now, the money's going to be the same either way, I think. He'll make his $8 or $10 million a year. So does he want to stay there and have the NCAA slapping him around every once in a while, or does he want to just go to the NFL and return to the NFL? Because anybody who doesn't know this, he was with the San Francisco 49ers, and he did pretty well. So he's got the resume to do almost anything he wants to do, and now it's, the world is his oyster, John. I think it's going to be pretty interesting. I was looking at who are the favorites for next year, and the favorites for next year's, at least the first four, are Georgia, Bama, Ohio State, and Texas. Imagine that. But Michigan's not on that list, and I think it's because they lose a lot of players to the NFL and maybe just graduation and everything else. When you can run the ball, what I love about Jim is he never succumbed to be what everybody else is in sports and specifically in the NFL. He didn't just say, you know what we're going to do is we're going to take the running game completely off the table and we're going to throw the football. No, he did exactly the opposite, which is why I think he's had so much success, John. He's got the 3 tight ends. Sometimes they're offensive linemen, but he's got 3-4 tight ends in there almost all the time. It's incredible what they were able to do. Why'd they win the game? Because they had the ball and they ran the ball down Washington's throat. They ran for over 300 yards on these guys. They averaged 8 yards a carry. So I think that, it's great to see what he's been able to do in college football. And if everybody else continues to do what they're doing, which is throwing more and running less, that's going to be a problem. And I've pointed this out before, John. When you look at the NFL, the teams that have the best running game are also the best teams. And yet it's still a throwing league. And everybody wants to say, let's not pay the running back. So it becomes very interesting. But how about the ratings as well, John? And I know you and I like to bring back the finance part to the sports part. They had 32.8 million viewers of the Rose Bowl. They don't have the numbers in quite yet for last night, but I would bet you that it was pretty good. Maybe not as good because the second half it turned into Michigan, especially the fourth quarter, and probably a lot of people said, "Look, I'm gonna go to bed now." But it's a great end to a great season, and especially the storyline behind with Harbaugh. What do you think? Should Harbaugh go to the NFL or should he stay at Michigan?
If he went to the NFL, it would probably be, Pete, to be the mentor and the guy that makes Justin Herbert the next Tom Brady. If anybody can be the next Tom Brady, that kid's got the skills. I wouldn't take the Raiders job because they don't have a quarterback, Pete. Who's their quarterback that you're going to hang your hat on with the Raiders?
Yeah, right now it's probably this kid O'Connell from Purdue, but he was a late round pick. Yeah, so nobody.
Yeah, and maybe that kid becomes a Drew Brees type player. Drew was great in college too, but when he got to the pros, it was a whole different level. But they've got a lot of the things necessary to win titles there, Pete. But they've just had crap for coaching. And you're in LA also, which is, attractive for a lot of folks, I'm sure. I'm sure he'd also, like I said, love to be the coach of the Raiders, but that team is not a team yet. Right. You've got Max Crosby and a bunch of great thuggish kind of defensive players. I'm not saying Crosby's one of them. He's just a great player. But they've got some outlaws on the defense for the Raiders, and the Raider Nation loves that. But they don't have the offense that he'd have if he went to San Diego.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a really tough decision, quite honestly, John. But I know that he also did hire somebody that makes it sound like he might be at least open to the idea of going into the NFL. So we'll see. Shocker or blowout. Now, take your pick or take both. Here's what I got for you, John. I'm looking at the NFL. We got the playoffs coming up next, right? Playoffs? So here's my shocker one. Philadelphia is going to be playing down here in Tampa. Now, 5 or 6 weeks ago, we would have said Philadelphia is going to run them off the field, right? I don't know if that's the case anymore. There's something going on at Philadelphia, and I know they lost coordinators. I understand that, but they still had a heck of a lot of the same players on the team, and they didn't lose too many. They lost a few. Everybody always does. But I'm just amazed at what kind of a collapse that Philadelphia has had. So I think a lot of people still look, and the record still looks pretty good. I think they had 11 wins. Not so bad, like 11-6. But Tampa Bay, they just feel like they're doing something special. So I throw that in as my shocker, and my blowout is I think Buffalo maybe takes Pittsburgh to the woodshed. It doesn't happen very often, but they got injuries, including one of the better defensive ends in football. They've got injuries at Pittsburgh, and I just think that the way Josh Allen has played the final few games of this year, and they're at home, I think that one could turn into something where maybe it's like a 31-10 type game where they beat them by 3 touchdowns. What do you think?
I think the best game on the board, Pete, is Cleveland and the Texans.
Yeah.
That's the one that's really got my juices going. Dolphins, Kansas City, I am not all fired up about either of those two teams this year. I know they're both good, but I'm not fired up about that game. And like you said, the Steelers without Watt playing out there, I think you're right. I don't think they've got enough pressure that they can put on Josh Allen without Watt. So I'd say Green Bay at Dallas, that could be a shocker, Pete. Green Bay love is hitting his stride. And could they beat Dallas? Well, it's at Dallas and the Cowboys play really tough. So my money would not be on Green Bay, but that would be a shocker. And the Rams at the Lions, the great thing there is, again, this is just intrigue, but it's Stafford against Goff. Mm-hmm. And I love that. And You said it at the beginning of the year that the Detroit Lions were looking like the team that you really wanted to hitch your wagon to, maybe. And they have looked great and they've looked flat, but when they look great, they're unstoppable. And the Rams have not looked unstoppable. So I got to give it to the Lions there, Pete.
Yep, should be pretty fun no matter what happens, but I think it's going to be an exciting playoffs and a lot of very deserving teams. And if people are wondering, what about Baltimore, what about San Francisco, they both have buys. So for now, we're going to have to wait to see them, and that means they get a little healthier as well. But I think there's some really fun games out there, John. I'm with you on this Miami and Kansas City. I think Kansas City doesn't look like the team that they've been looking like the previous couple of years. But on the other side, Miami is a lot of offense, not much defense, but boy, there's a lot of offense there to watch.
Yeah. And the Monday night game's not a bad game. And it's kind of interesting that we get a wild card game on a Monday too. So NFL's still doing a lot of things right, Pete. They want to hold on to those, 93 of the top 100 game things on TV were the NFL.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Pete and I will be back tomorrow, folks, Wednesday for another Rebels Edge. As always, we would encourage you to go to itsnotanoption.com. That's itsnotanoption.com. Our gift to you is that you get a free book. You can claim your free book at itsnotanoption.com. This is our fourth book. It has a lot of the tricks of the trade and makes options understandable. We've had some great help from Bill Johnson, one of the folks at Market Rebellion, who really makes this book rock for us. So make sure you check it out. It's notanoption.com, and you can claim a free book there. We'll be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time.